Back in 2013, a study showed that those congressmen who had attended Catholic schools, a majority of them had voted for pro-abortion rights or related funding. Now, this was a study about the graduate schools and law schools that these congressmen and women had attended. I couldn't find any studies about the affiliation of Catholic schools, elementary schools, and so on. I know that several of our civic leaders have attended Catholic schools. Certainly our vice president did, and several others did. As we begin focusing this week on Catholic Schools Week, it's important to kind of think about what kind of impact, what kind of shaping those who pass through our schools have. How do we affect them? How do we form their consciences? This past week, we looked back at that tragic event, the 42nd anniversary of the United States Supreme Court's decision, which discovered a right to privacy in the U.S. Constitution, on the basis of which effectively it became legal to take the life of the unborn child in the womb pretty much until birth. Since then, estimates vary, but the estimates are that in the U.S. alone, some 57 million abortions have taken place. 57 million lives ended through this. About 1.2 million per year, 3,288 per day, 137 per hour. By the time I get through this homily, some 36. Yet prominent Catholic leaders continue to support the flawed logic and rhetoric of those who not only support abortion, but consider it to be a human good, a constitutional right, even the bedrock of a free and just society. Clearly, there is something in their Catholic school background that is lacking, that was missing. Not to say that it's the educational institutions alone that carry all the blame. Everyone is a free individual and eventually is responsible for his or her own decisions. But there should be a time for self-examination, self-reflection. In 1984, the late governor of New York State, he just passed away, Mario Cuomo, this month, I believe. He gave a speech at Notre Dame. It was a very, very fundamental, important speech. And it provided the justification for a generation of Catholic leaders after him to support abortion. Cuomo famously argued that he was personally opposed to abortion, but that this did not mean that he had to vote for laws that would reduce or curtail abortion. In other words, Governor Cuomo, along with countless Catholic politicians and several others, were personally opposed to abortion, but would not want to impose that view on anyone else. Let's see if this holds up in other cases. I'm personally opposed to shoplifting. I would never shoplift. But I don't want to impose that view on you, and I wouldn't want laws to prevent shoplifting. Well, how about theft or robbery? I'm opposed personally to robbery. I would never rob anyone, but I'm not going to impose that view on you, and I don't want laws to prevent or to curtail robbery. What about domestic violence? I am personally opposed to domestic violence. If I had a wife, I would certainly not hit her, but I don't want to impose that view on you. I wouldn't want laws that prevent or curtail domestic violence. What about rape? I am personally opposed to rape. I would never rape anyone, but I am not going to impose that view on you. You get the point. I hope the point is clear. The argument really works only if we do not consider the killing of human life to be something evil. There are others who generally argue that we shouldn't impose our morality on others through legislation. But what on earth is law other than an imposition with the full power of the state of a view of right and wrong? Why are certain actions considered illegal? Because we have determined as a society that they are harmful to individuals or to the well-being of society. Why else? This argument about not imposing morality does not understand the terms morality or law. What it means to say is that I disagree with your view of what is right and wrong. I don't want it made into law. But that doesn't get to the heart of the question. Is it indeed right or wrong truly? Another version of this is that Catholics or religious people should not impose our religious views on others. In this way, an opposition to the killing of human beings is somehow like asking that everyone stop eating meat on Fridays. It's a peculiarly Catholic thing or something like that. But the dignity of life is not purely a matter of Catholic doctrine. We do not need the church or divine revelation to tell us that it is wrong to kill an innocent human being. At the annual March for Life in Washington, D.C. this past week, which drew some 500 or 600,000 people with minimal coverage from our elite media, there were several groups there who marched who were not Catholic or Christian. There were LGBT groups. We certainly have our disagreements with them. There were atheist groups. There were secular groups who marched for the right of human life from the moment of conception. Unaided by divine revelation, human reason can arrive at the conclusion that unborn life is indeed human life, and therefore deserving of all the rights and protections that every single human life deserves. And indeed, it is in this area especially that there is the greatest dissimulation and deceit. The life in the womb, it is life, of course. It's alive, but it's not human. It's a clump of cells, a blob of tissue, a fetus. Well, if it's not a human life, then what is it? Is it a frog? Is it a tadpole, a dog, a kangaroo? This is nothing but semantics, a sleight of hand, a trick to disguise the full reality that from the moment of conception, a new human being is present, unique, irrepeatable. And this is not a religious view. Study the science of embryology. At the moment of conception, a unique, genetically distinct creature is present inside the mother's womb. The best arguments on the pro-abortion side recognize that the life developing inside the mother's body is indeed a human life, but argue that the right of the mother, her choice, for whatever reason, trumps the right of the child to live. Let's think about that. If that child inside the womb, at whatever stage of development, could actually make her voice heard, what do you think she would say as the mother walks up those steps to the clinic? What else could she say? Mom, please don't kill me. And that really is the crux here. We are in a situation where the right to life of millions of human beings depends on the will, the whim, the yes of someone else. The mother or the father or the doctor or whoever it may be. If the new life is wanted, then it's a baby. It's all joy and light and hugs and smiles and get the ultrasound and share it on Facebook. But if it is not wanted, then it is a fetus, a clump of tissues, an alien invader that is encroaching on the well-being and happiness of the woman. It is an affront to her liberty and freedom that she be prevented from casting it out into the dumpster. And that is where fetuses, human beings that are aborted, end up. This is liberty, that the right to life of a human being depends on another's whim and will and caprice. Is that not the greatest of tyrannies, the most despotic of regimes? And we pride ourselves on being the most advanced and free and enlightened society on earth. Not like those barbarous places where they flog people for small infractions or cut their hands off and shoot adulterers and behead blasphemers. 1.2 million lives a year in their silent anguish tell us otherwise. Yes, the decision to commit abortion is indeed a terribly anguished and difficult one in many cases, though not always. In New York City, they say 41% of all pregnancies end in abortion. 41% of all pregnancies. In New York City, the most progressive place perhaps on the planet, where contraception is freely available and sex education starts practically from infancy in public schools. But no matter how difficult or anguished, how does this justify the taking of an innocent human life? Yes, poverty and socioeconomic status have much to do with women seeking abortion. Overwhelmingly, it is poor women, minority women, immigrant women who seek out abortion. Clearly, we have a lot to do to help reduce poverty, to change structures in society so that women do not feel that this is their only choice. But how does this justify the killing of an innocent human being? You are poor, so please stop breeding and reproducing undesirable elements of society. That is indeed what Margaret Sanger, the founder of Planned Parenthood, argued. Look it up. Look it up. She was a big proponent of the eugenics movement, which was very popular amongst all kinds of people in the early 20th century. We do need to work to change hearts and minds on this issue indeed. But will we not provide the protection of law to innocent human life in the meanwhile? What percentage of hearts and minds need to be converted before it is okay to start seeking the protection of the law? 20%? 35? 50? Is that how we behave in other situations? We need to make sure to change hearts and minds and make sure that all people are inculcated with sufficient chastity before we will outlaw rape. No, it doesn't work that way. I hope this is a call to rethink and re-examine this issue for those who may not have thought about it, for those who have simply been formed by what our media and our culture tells us. Let me make one thing very clear. Abortion is a huge and terrible tragedy for the child, but as much for the mother. The church wishes to heal, to forgive, to embrace any woman who may have made this terrible choice. Condemnation leads nowhere. The Lord is always ready, arms open, and the church, a mother, is always ready, arms open. The call to repentance we hear in the gospel today from Jesus applies to all of us, and there is absolutely nothing at all that is beyond God's mercy, and our Holy Father does not tire of repeating this message. Furthermore, we as a parish community, as a school, need to be a place where women find welcome and support. If there is a woman who is in a situation of having a difficult or an unwanted or an unexpected pregnancy, this should be a place that she feels comfortable coming and turning for support, for spiritual support and for moral support. This is not a place where someone comes to get shamed, to have their finger wagged at. That is not what being pro-life means. And finally, I must recognize that there are incredible numbers of heroes in this whole tragic scenario. Actually, all mothers are heroes. All those who said yes, especially those who said yes in the most difficult and most trying circumstances, maybe against great pressure, who said yes to life. All those women who were carrying children that were suspected of being, or actually were carrying some kind of disability, who said yes to that, to taking on in love that charge. In a sense, all of us here are survivors of Roe versus Wade. And there are countless others who work in the trenches tirelessly. Go to a pregnancy clinic, go to Athens pregnancy clinic and see the number of volunteers, the number of staff who work on really limited funding with no support from the government, with opposition in many places from the government, to try and give real and alternative supports to mothers, not just through their pregnancy, but after their pregnancy. There's a religious order that started in New York City called the Sisters of Life, who run houses to house women who might not have any other place to go while they are pregnant and as they are young mothers. Now, I don't doubt that our school and our parish is a place that truly embraces the full vision of the human person as the church's tradition presents it to us. As we begin this Catholic Schools Week and we celebrate the accomplishments, let this be a somber reminder of how much work there still needs to be done. Our school should be a place, our parish should be a place, not only where everyone is drawn more and more closely to follow Jesus, to hear that call from the gospel, to drop our nets and follow him. A place where people in the school, where they learn virtue and hard work and community, but most especially that deep value for the most basic of human rights, without which there is no other right, which is the right to life. The inestimable dignity of every single human being from the moment of conception. We are all made in the image and likeness of God. And our worth is so great that our God became man and died for each and every one of us.